What's up, everybody? This is Lou, and right now let's discuss an aspect of this whole pro life ordeal. Um, so, I'll start with an anecdote, okay? I'm a boxing coach, that's what I do for trade. I spend most of my day with people younger than me, just trying to give them a little confidence and give them a way to understand this world a little bit better and understand themselves a little bit better. So one of my neighbors, they have a son who's a year older than my oldest son. They put their son in boxing, for a little while, a few weeks. No, I think actually he trained with me for a few months. Uh, he would only come once a week, and most of the time he spent just having fun with my son. But he learned a little bit of our sport as well. So after training every week, I take my sons to lunch. I try to, do things like that with them that my father never did with me. So I didn't drop this kid off at home and then take my kids to lunch. Like, I didn't do that. If we were going to lunch, he was going to lunch. So I would bring him with us. And I would pay for his food out of my own pocket because to me, little things like that as a coach go a long way. They can make a huge difference with a kid. It actually shows a kid that you care about their existence. Plus, I grew up down south. You have family in Georgia. I had family in Arkansas. I had family in I have family in Florida to this day. Florida and Georgia. I had family in Virginia. And for all the flaws of the South, when you got down to the nitty gritty of the people, whenever you'd go over to somebody's house, if they were raised right, if they or as we say, if they had some home training, they would ask you, "Are you hungry?" or "Did you eat yet?" And if your response was no, you get fed. That's a big thing because that's one way to show regard for another person's life is that when they're with you, you're willing to feed them uh, out of whatever it is you have available to you, or you're willing to spend your own money to make sure they don't walk away from you hungry. Okay. So recently, North Dakota voted on a bill to extend free lunch programs to poor, underprivileged children. And I watched a disgusting ghoul of a human being, a senator by the name of Wobama, get up in front of the Senate and talk about how feeding children is akin to irresponsibility with the state's money. I can't think of a worse thing to say from a person who I'm 100% positive if you asked him his stance on another issue, he would describe himself as pro-life. Uh, he even suggested that there are kids who go to school and who chose not to eat in the morning. They're choosing not to eat at home, and he said, "Why should it become the state's responsibility to feed that kid? Because you should feed all kids. That's why." What do you mean? Like, what is a state for? If not that, if not the common good? I don't understand what this guy does for a living if he thinks it's irresponsible to feed children after being willing to legislatively mandate that people have them. He essentially said that is solely the responsibility of the parent. And I know there are people out there who would agree with that from a philosophical, idealistic perspective of personal accountability, because that's a big thing, that gets tossed around a lot now. But I just can't wrap my head around how you can just not feed a kid. That I don't understand that. Like, I don't. If there's a kid staying at our house, that kid eats. If my kids eat, those kids eat. We have baseball team. My son plays Little League. Each parent takes turn bringing snacks. It's a standard process, standard procedure. What is going on here? And now let me go a step further. Church schools. I've investigated more than one church school here where I live in Las Vegas, and the one of the main questions I would ask them, much to the annoyance of people around me, is, what does your lunch program look like? And let me tell you something that struck me as a little bit unusual. A lot of them didn't have lunch programs, like at all. At all. They would, like some people would say, well, it's a church school. How much money is it actually going to have? Well, there's one now building an iron gate around their whole facility. So apparently they have enough money for that. Personally, I think iron gates are not cheap, especially right now. So I'm not sure. I think to me, that's a misallocation of resources. And when I say their facility, I don't mean the school. They're building it around the church that's across the street from the school. No lunch programs. Instead, what they have is some kind of deal with a commercial entity where you pay per meal. And you're already paying tuition. So not only do you pay tuition, but you also have to pay for the food, and it's not cheap. You'd think it'd be cheaper. It's not. It's more expensive. It's more expensive than us, sending kids with lunches to school every day. So one school had deals with like fast food companies, and I'm like, wait a minute. You have deals with commercial entities? That's got to benefit you in some way. These corporations aren't going to do this shit out of the generosity of their hearts. What's going on? So my contention is very simple. If you advertise yourself as pro-life and stand in opposition to feeding children who may not have access to food or resources, there is nothing pro-life about you. Nothing. That right there, to me, collapses your entire contention that is what you are, collapses in on itself. Especially if you're a religious institution who advertises tenets, what you consider moral tenets to people. That immediately makes you a scam in my book. Fraud. And if you deal with commercial entities, which are going to levy a profit in some way, you're making money off the fact that these kids don't have food at your facility, well, that just says everything that anyone needs to know. Senator Obama, if you ever, for whatever reason, see this video, I hope you get voted out of office. People in North Dakota, your children deserve better than that frickin' guy. This has been Lou, on your left.